Well, good evening, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee here on this Wednesday night, the 12th of December, 2018. 12 days from Christmas Eve, 13 days from Christmas Day. And we just kind of continue to march along in this rather interesting active pattern. They're not always big storms that are moving along in this pattern. Sometimes they're minor systems, which is what we're going to be dealing with for Thursday morning over parts of the Northeast. Specifically, I think for northeastern Pennsylvania, mainly north of Route 78, New Jersey, along and north of Route 78 into the Hudson Valley. And that might even go all the way up to I-90 or a little bit further north than that into parts of Massachusetts, Connecticut, down to about New York City, and maybe even into Long Island. It's going to be one of these cheap thrill coating to an inch or so events, perhaps in areas as you go north away from the coast. You head up the Hudson Valley, there probably will be some 1 to 2 inch amounts in a few places. Wouldn't be surprised, particularly where there's a little bit of local effect, elevation or lack thereof, depending on where you live. So we're going to take a look at that. We have a pretty complex storm system for the weekend. It's not a simple forecast because of what's going on in the upper air. You initially would look at this and say that maybe the storm would go up to our west, a little bit of a point of occlusion development, and then done. But it's a little more complicated than that. The low looks like the primary low is only going to get so far north, and then everything's going to translate east, and it might take a day or two for that to happen. So it'll be a long duration gloom, doom, and raw weather for a good chunk of the Northeast and the northern Mid-Atlantic states, starting late Friday and Friday night, and probably lasting through Sunday and maybe even into Sunday night or early Monday, depending on which model has the upper hand in dealing with all this. And we'll look at the long range, which is, as always, never an easy puzzle. It's always difficult to decipher where the long range is going to take us or what the overall pattern is. I happen to think that it still is on the dynamic side and that there will be some weather systems along the way between now and the end of the month. I also think that cold air may eventually wind up being more important than what's being modeled at the moment, but we'll see about that. Let me say good evening to those of you who are joining from S&S Storm Chase and Forecast page on Facebook. Those of you in South Central Pennsylvania and North Central Maryland, it looks like the overnight snow, maybe the southern edge grazes you tomorrow morning, and that should be about it. And of course, you're going to be dealing with rain for Friday night and for Saturday and probably for Sunday as well. To the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut Stormwatch page. Welcome to those of you who are on tonight. Thanks for being here on my YouTube channel. From Angry Ben's Angry Weather page, good evening to you. And of course, my weather page, meteorologist Joe Chaffee. And I'm just going to send a quick notification to those that are on my free Google app because they can watch the live stream live. So I'm going to let them know. They'll get a notification right now. And just give me 1 second for me to put that up there. And today is, I'm doing it now because I forgot to do it. I forgot to do it just as we started the video before I hit the start button. So give me 1 second here. Okay. Let's gonna get this going. And so now the folks on my app know to come on and they can watch it actually from the app itself. All right, so let's get started tonight. I want to touch on first off, we're gonna take a look at what's going on across the country with the watches and warnings. There's not a whole lot from the standpoint of precipitation type watches and warnings and winter weather advisories. we're likely to see that change a bit. I think we'll probably see some flood watches go up for tomorrow for Friday, late for Friday and into Friday night, Saturday for parts of the southeast into the interior mid-Atlantic, because not only do you have to contend with a rainfall of maybe up to a couple of inches, but you're also going to have about 2 feet, 1 to 2 feet of snow melt to deal with. So needless to say, you've got saturated grounds everywhere. The big deal tonight is wind across much of the southern plains and back through Texas. We have various wind advisories and high wind warnings up as low pressure begins to take shape in the southern plains in Oklahoma, and that's going to be eventually and sooner rather than later begin to pull moisture up out of the Gulf of Mexico. We also have various wind advisories and some high wind warnings up through parts of the Rockies, small area of winter storm warnings in interior Washington, not too far from the coast, but inland, and some flood watches up along the coast. We have warnings for black ice up and down the interior mid-Atlantic because of the snow cover and the fact that there'll probably be at least some partially clear skies at some point during the overnight in those areas. So there will be some refreezing. And around the Great Lakes, we have a small winter weather advisory up near Milwaukee and southeastern Wisconsin, and a little bit of dense fog developing in parts of southern Minnesota. So not really overly active from the standpoint of warnings. I want to bring up I got this from the Weather Service's Eastern Regional Office Facebook page. It is a really interesting compilation of statistics of areas in the eastern U.S., and it speaks to the snowfall as compared to normal through the 10th. And it's really amazing when you look at all these different places, and it's not just concentrated in one part of the Northeast or one part of the Mid-Atlantic. It really extends from Maine all the way down into the Carolinas. And there were a couple of standouts in here. For example, Caribou, Maine. Now, as much as it has snowed in New England this November and first part of December, it's actually well above average, not just average, but well above average. The average snowfall, for example, in Caribou, Maine, 18.8. They've had close to 40 inches of snow already. Syracuse, number 2, with 29.6 versus 19.5. And, on and on these numbers go. And if you go further south, for example, some of the really crazy numbers for like Blacksburg, Virginia, 13.7 inches from the storm this weekend. That is compared to an average through December 10th of just 1.7 inches. All right, that's huge. Roanoke, 15 versus 1.3. Asheville, North Carolina, 11.4 versus 0.2 of an inch. So if you are, I have to just be honest, if you're a snow lover and you seem to think that you've been neglected so far, you're a little bit delusional here. I mean, these are really pretty impressive and astounding numbers. New York City, 1.3 is the average through the 10th of September, as measured in Central Park, which is right in Midtown Manhattan, 6.4. Newark, an inch and a half is normal, 6.4 there as well. You even go down close to the coastal areas like where Kennedy is, which is right down near the Atlantic coast, 4.8 versus 1.1. Where I am, Islip, 4.3, and I'm actually 2 miles from there, and I had about an inch more than Islip did versus 1.6. The one thing that stood out to me was Boston, because Boston has been left out of this. 0.1, that's it, a tenth of an inch of snow in Boston, where their average up through December 10th is usually at about 3.4. So there are always going to be, just as if you had a large area of below normal, you'll probably be able to find a couple of pockets where you have some isolated areas where snowfalls would be normal or a little bit above. The opposite here is true. You've got this huge geographic area where you're looking at well above average snowfalls, and there are a couple of spots that seem to have come up empty, and Boston is one of them. Uh, that it's notable that Boston is because of how far north um, Boston is. And by the way, this only the furthest west points on here are Toledo, Ohio at 3.8 versus 3.9. So they're a tenth below, but we'll call that even. But once you go, this does not include what we've seen in and around Chicago, northern Illinois, back through parts of the upper Midwest and through the middle Mississippi Valley and even the upper Mississippi Valley, because I think if we added those in there, you would find that those numbers were also above average. Pennsylvania, 10.6 for Scranton versus 11.3 versus 4.7. Williamsport, 10.6 versus 3.5. And clearly not every single point on the map is here. Allentown, 8.1 versus 1.9. Harrisburg, 8.8 versus 1.9. So it's been an exceptional period for snow in the Northeast. As far as what's going on tonight is concerned, we are starting to see some of the ingredients coming together for the rain for later Friday and Saturday. You get this feed of subtropical moisture coming out of the Pacific, and you can see it streaming in now into Texas and across the lower Mississippi Valley. But if you look up toward the upper right, you're going to see coming out of the Great Lakes, there's a weak low that is moving eastward with a trailing warm front. That is pushing east. That is what is probably going to bring a coating to an inch of snow for parts of the Northeast tomorrow morning. And I'm thinking the time will be somewhere between 7 a.m. and about noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That should be prime time for all of this. And when we look at the latest surface map, we have low pressure. You can see there's a low between Green Bay and Milwaukee. And there's a warm front that snakes down from there into northern Ohio. It cuts Ohio on a diagonal into northern West Virginia and northern Virginia. So it's just north of that warm front that you're going to see a band of snow break out during the overnight. By the way, there's a weak front that is coming down through the Hudson Valley now, and that is going to be some colder air, the leading edge of some colder air that's working down from New England. That is what that warm air to the south is going to be working against in order to produce this area of light snow. And in the meantime, when we head down into the southern plains and in the southern Rockies, you've got the beginnings of low pressure in northeastern New Mexico and another low in eastern Colorado. Looks like it's just east of Denver. And this is what will be creating the strong winds, and we had those all those high wind warnings and wind advisories that are going up for that part of the U.S. And that's the weather system that's going to be impacting the East for the weekend. Not too much going on the radar tonight. We've got a little bit of activity around the Great Lakes. Again, ahead of that warm front that's pushing eastward. We're going to see that area expand a little bit. We've got some snows in parts of the Rockies. And also we've got some rain beginning to come in to the Pacific Northwest, where the next weather system is about to come ashore. So kind of busy night here from the standpoint of weather. Let's take a look at where all of this is headed for tomorrow, for Thursday morning, with this lead system first off. And it's hard to find. It's not like we have a really definable low here that we're dealing with. It's not quite like that. It's really just a warm front that's bucking against a building high to the north. And this is how the NAM handles it. And there's a little bit of precip there. There's some snow. We are at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. There really isn't too much once you go south of Route 78 down into southern Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. You actually have some rain showers in parts of West Virginia. But close to that cold air and this weak system going by, you've got this area of light snow that by 7 a.m. is covering much of northern New Jersey. I don't know how much of this is actually reaching the ground. The 3-kilometer NAM is giving you what it thinks it's its radar presentation for 7 a.m. And you can see that even south of that, you go south of Route 78 in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania, the precip's actually more rain than anything else, and that could be a function of intensity. If the precipitation is, the atmosphere is cold, but it's marginal, and usually what causes uh, the precipitation to tip one way or the other, be it snow or rain, would be the intensity of it. If it's light, then it would probably fall as rain because, well, the light precip uh, won't dynamically cool the atmosphere. But if you've got some really heavy precip that develops some strong vertical motion, the atmosphere will cool, and instead of rain, you'd wind up with snow. But either way, this is a minor system, so we're talking light stuff here. We go into the afternoon. It starts to diminish. You see there's that high to the north, just kind of holding that cold air in as best as it can. And then it pulls away. As we move into Friday, I don't think we're going to see much weather improvement from sky conditions. We're going to have this onshore flow that's going to be developing. And now you're seeing the rain down to the south that's moving into the Carolinas. And I'm going to go to the wider view at this point. There's also a pretty solid squall line that develops here in the Gulf of Mexico and moves over the Florida Panhandle on Friday. So there probably will be some sort of severe weather threat here, I would think, come late Thursday night and on Friday. The actual low center is still out to the west, and the upper low center it's still out to the west, and it's pretty far south too. So here comes that rain for Friday, moving up by Friday evening. It's into southern Pennsylvania, now moving northeastward, not quite to New York City by 1 a.m. Saturday, but through the areas through Virginia, North Carolina, interior South Carolina, all these areas that were picked up significant amounts of snow from this weekend are now going to see all that snow washed away. And we're talking some isolated rainfall amounts of up to a couple of inches or maybe a bit more than that. And when you're melting 1 to 2 feet of snow, and that was a wet snow, so the ratios were 10 to 1. So you're talking uh, about an inch and a half to 2 inches worth of liquid, okay, that's going to be produced by the melting snows, plus another couple of inches of additional rainfall, and you've got 4 inches of rain coming down in 24 hours time. So I think the door is open here for some flooding. I would think flood watches will probably start going up tomorrow for later Friday night, and Saturday for the southeast. And then moving on with the regular NAM, because it doesn't go out. The 3 kilometer NAM only goes out to 60 hours, where we got another 24 on the 12 kilometer. You can see that rain extends up to about New York City, up to a couple of inches. It tails off a bit as you move further north, because this system is only going to be able to get so far north because it's going to come to a grinding halt. And here's how it looks on the on the 12 kilometer NAM. And there's your severe weather possibilities here come Friday in the Florida Panhandle, southern Georgia, perhaps, maybe even eventually translating into coastal South Carolina during Friday night. There's a good shot of energy here that we're dealing with. And Saturday, we're probably going to have some thunderstorms in the Carolinas. And there's your rain. And of course, with this surface low coming to a grinding halt, you're going to see the rain, the surge of rain initially taper off as we head into Saturday night, but all that energy still has to play through. And the other thing is, by the way, with the high up to the north, it's going to be raw and damp and chilly around here. Temperatures on Saturday probably not getting out of the 40s, and some places probably not out of the low to mid 40s. And Sunday will probably tail lower than that with a low just offshore. The GFS wants to prolong precip on Sunday, and then it does something that none of the other models are doing. There is cold air. If you look up in the center of the picture there, the upper center, there's a weather front, and there's a corresponding short wave that's going to be dropping into New England while this surface low is out offshore. So it gradually envelops all that cold air and drags it southward, along with having some precip left over later Monday night into early Tuesday. I'm not 100% so sure about this. I'm going to defer for at least another couple of runs because the European model has the low further south. It does have precip along the coast from that low, but it also has it too warm, and it has it as mostly rain, and then it pulls out. The parallel GFS has absolutely nothing once the low pulls out Sunday night, and it actually is too far out, and there really isn't anything goes on Monday. And then about the only place that it's really going to be below average this week, or near average to below normal, will be New England and portions of the northern, down to about the northern mid-Atlantic, because you're going to have a couple of weather fronts that are going to try and come through here during next week, thanks to the upper air, the way it's set up. You're getting some cold air coming down from eastern Canada. A lot of this has to do with the fact that there's a little bit of a blocky signature out in the North Atlantic, and that is going to keep things cool in the Northeast and the Northern Mid-Atlantic, while everywhere else will probably be about average or above average as we go through next week. Now, longer term, it's a little hard to figure as we go through next weekend and Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. There is going to be energy running around, and depending on which run you look at, those those short waves, be it either in the northern stream or in the southern stream. On some runs they get together. On some runs they tend to stay separate, and that is going to be key to where everything is going to be, what's going to be happening going forward. The parallel GFS model run, and I want to just make this notation, the parallel GFS has been consistently trying to lift this system up northeastward into southeastern Canada. It has finally joined the party of the other models in being further south, and where the surface low doesn't really get much further north than, say, southern West Virginia before all the energy translates to the coast. And here's where it's different from the GFS and the European, is that it takes that coastal low on Sunday and then just takes it out to the northeast. Makes for some decent snows for Nova Scotia, if that's correct. And I think both the GFS and the European would also probably bring some decent snows to Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, regardless of which model you use for that area. They seem to be in agreement there. They all get to that point. It's how they get there that they're all a bit different. And then on this particular run, the parallel GFS wants to bring a southern shortwave out and phase it with the shortwave in the north. The GFS that we just looked at kept them separate. This one phases it together, so you get the model trying to bring up a low up the Appalachians. This would be a soaking rain a week from Sunday into Sunday night, and then actually it would be colder and drier for Christmas Eve and for Christmas Day if you wanted to play that game. I'm not convinced yet as to what the outcome is going to be in the longer term, mainly because of the fact that there is a fair amount of energy running around, and the upper air actually gets pretty interesting down the road. But each model run is going to time things out a little bit differently with these short waves, and that's going to have impact on the long term. The other thing I want to mention about the long range is we are going to be seeing some significant changes in the overall pattern as we head toward the end of December. And that, I think, is the biggest change is going to be up in the Pacific. And it's a very important change because if we look back at where we are now, which is, I'm just going to go to, we'll go to tomorrow night just to be, I mean, I could probably pick any point in the next 24 to 36 hours. So we'll pick this one, and I'm going to illustrate it for you. I did a little bit of this tonight on my Patreon live stream for my Patreon members on that platform. They got their live stream a bit earlier, so I'm just going to do a little bit of it here again. So give me 1 second here, and I'll put the paint box up. Try not to get too wrapped up in each model run. I keep saying that because I mean, there's a natural tendency to want to do that because that's the snapshot that you have in front of you. You work with the photographs that you have in front of you, basically. And I understand that there's a sense that what the model prints is some sort of absolute, and it just isn't. Okay, you got to expect change. It's just try to gain an overall understanding of what's happening in the pattern, and then you can wait to figure out what the specifics are going to be. But the big problem is, of course, the big issue with regards to the overall pattern is what's going on out here in the West. You've got this almost looks like a clover leaf, but this is just basically one ginormous trough that is out in the West. You've got troughing in the Pacific. You've got troughing south of the Aleutians. You've got troughing over Alaska. It's all over the place. And you also even have some troughing up in the Pacific Northwest. And the problem with this is that this is making that East Pacific oscillation, which you want, which snow lovers and cold weather lovers would like to see it negative, is actually quite positive. There's no flow coming from Northwest Canada. The flow is actually running across southern Canada, coming out of the Pacific, and then you've got this southern part of the jet that is split from it. So our air is just not all that cold. At best, it's seasonal. Now, we're getting some low-level cold air in the east because of this ridge that's up in eastern Canada, so you get a bit of a surface high that builds, and that drains some cold air southward. But as we go through time, we start to see a bit of a repair job going on. For one thing, if we take a look at Sunday, for example, we'll jump to Sunday, and there we go. Just want to make sure you guys are seeing it, and you are. So this is Sunday, and on Sunday, you've got uh, the systems that are playing out in the east. Here's your southern stream. Let me just change that to red. I like troughs in red. So there's that system for Sunday that's going to be going out somewhere off the Virginia coast, Delmarva Peninsula. There's another shortwave coming down in the north here. That's with the cold air. That's with some colder air. And if you look at the jet now you've got a bit of a flow coming down from northwest Canada, thanks to a ridge that pops back up in the northwestern part of Canada. But while that's happening, you still have a deep trough off the west coast. You've got, troughing south of the Aleutians, troughing over Alaska. So you still got this kind of, mess here, but it's not quite as messy as it was just a few days earlier. Now, if we go a little bit further along, and this is where you start to see a real repair job as you go into the weekend before Christmas. And by the way, this is going to be out at between day 10 and 11 in the long range. So it's far enough out where you still have to have some doubts, but it's not all the way out at day 16. But you can see the big difference now, especially out in the Pacific. You really just have this one trough that's in the Gulf of Alaska now. The other troughs have disappeared. You start to get a bit of a ridge that builds up near the date line, a ridge up in the Pacific Northwest, a trough that sets up along or just east of 90 degrees west, and you've got a ridge here off to the east, but not well off the east coast, not on the east coast, and then a trough down about 55 west. So by the time we get to the weekend before Christmas, you've got an established flow out of northwest Canada that's bringing some colder air down. The issue is going to be the short waves that are running around in it. And again, every run is going to be doing something a little bit differently with respect to how it sees all of this. By the way, I'm using the parallel GFS run. If you actually use the operational GFS run, it's a little bit different because it times out the short waves differently, but it kind of gets to the same idea as we go through the long range. And the European, I don't know, my feeling on the European overall was that the European actually seemed like it wanted to get colder a little sooner than the other models, but I didn't really give it, to be fair, I did not give it a good analysis, a good look today. But this is at 240 hours, which matches up to This is about 24 hours before what I had just showed you with the parallel GFS. But you can see that the European also has, again, you see some troughing here in the east. Hang on one second. Right there, there's another another system moving into the western lakes. You do have again, a much uh, different look out in the Pacific. You start to see the troughs weaken a bit, or at least get back to a latitude where, I'm sorry, a longitude where they allow for the ridge to build up into the northwest, and you begin to establish a colder flow into the United States, into the plains, and into the eastern part of the United States. So we're still the pattern is actually doing what it usually does in December, and that is it usually is a month where you are things are moving around, so that as we get toward the end of the month and the very beginning of January, we're going to probably lock into something that's going to carry us through a good portion of the winter months. What that will finally look like remains to be seen, but it'll be certainly fascinating to see how we get there and what happens in the process. The Weather Prediction Center's rainfall map for the next 7 days, by the way, some pockets of 2-inch rains in and around New York City and into southeast and south central Pennsylvania, down into parts of northeastern Virginia. Doesn't get too crazy with the rainfalls back into the interior parts of Virginia, North Carolina, generally about an inch to an inch and a half. But you start to see some bigger amounts as you head into toward the coastal areas of the Carolinas, and that's probably convectively driven with some 3, 4, 5-inch rain amounts going down to the Florida Panhandle. Small patch of heavy rain through Arkansas, eastern Oklahoma, southeastern Missouri, and also back toward the Alabama, Mississippi, southeast coast of Louisiana. And then, of course, out in the west where we have substantial rains, mainly from San Francisco northward, and particularly Oregon, Washington northward. Some big rain amounts being generated up in the eastern part of Washington State, upwards of 10 inches or more. So with that huge mess in the Pacific the way it is, it's no surprise that you're going to see a substantial amount of precipitation there, rain at the coast, and certainly I think cold enough that it will be snow as you go inland into Washington State and on up into the inland areas of the Pacific Northwest. So let me come over to the chat board. Good evening to everybody. I did notice a few of the regulars on here, or more than a few of the regulars, and it's always good to see you guys I love seeing you guys on a nightly basis. And some new folks on too. I see One Man's Opinion. You heard that there could be a bad nor'easter on Christmas. I it always brings to mind because I always get these sort of cryptic notes from people, messages on Facebook. I heard, I heard this rumor. It's also, you sit around and, you sit around in bars and, and you're gossiping about weather. It's just, that's the kind of the image I get of all this. I don't know, where you heard it from. You can be more specific as to where you heard this, because there's all sorts of stuff that flies on the social media, and I get it. And I'm sure you'll see over the next few days if you start to see some weather model runs making snowstorms in different places, you're going to probably see posts from the usual suspects that are going to say, there's an imminent snowstorm in 15 days, beware, or 12 days, or whatever it is. And for those of you who are new to this channel, just so you know, I don't operate that way. And anybody who's a regular here, if you ask them on the chat board, they'll tell you, that's we take a very calm, methodical approach to things when it comes to weather going forward. Yes, we don't usually talk. Yeah, no flat earthers, no harpists. Okay, not the ones who play the instruments, but the weather control people and all the rest of it. This is this is a weather page, and we do weather forecasting. We don't do any of that sort of stuff. I don't know about, the parallel GFS, Scott Briller. I think, well, I've been starting to look at it every day to get used to it. I'm trying to get, trying to see what um, its quirks are, and it's going to take me probably another week or two to really sort of figure out some of those quirks. Uh, it has done well on certain things as I've watched on and off in the last month or so. But with certain events, it did pretty good with that November 15th event, at least in its approach. Not, I don't know about the final approach, but at least in its initial approach. But it's also made some big boo-boos along the way as well. So yeah, I mean, you have to start looking at it because that's going to be the operational. So you want to have at least a handle on how it behaves in certain storms. Okay, let's see. I'm just Jason Schaefer. It's good to see you on board tonight. Um, I see Adrian's weather forecast is trying to get some folks to get forecasts from him. Works for me. Go do whatever you want to do. Let's see. Trying to Timothy Veltman. You got your little cheap thrill last night with some snow. You'll probably get another cheap thrill tomorrow with this with this weak system moving eastward. And just trying to see. It was warm in Christmas, 50s or 60s last year. You know what? I'm having a tough time remembering what it was like here. I don't know. I don't remember. Uh, no, it was. I'm trying to think. Last December, of course, we had. It was really cold here in the east, so I'm not sure. Where exactly are you? Uh, let's see. If you're in Maine, by the way, you can't complain. You can't have it. You can't snow every day, even in Maine. All right, you just can't. And you've got more than double the normal. In some places, more than double the normal. So you're doing pretty well here since late November, early December. It's amazing with snow lovers because snow lovers, the way they see the world, it has to start snowing as soon as the clock ticks midnight, November 1st, and it has to snow every single day until April 30th. And I might even be being tough on that. Maybe more like May 30th. I don't know. It just seems to me like you have a pretty unrealistic view of of how weather works in general because it just doesn't work that way. Even in the winters where you get a lot of snow, you always get stretches where there's a bit of a break. Okay, let's see. Just running through the last of this, and then I'm going to wrap it up. All right, folks. Johnny, try and stay dry, Johnny Quest. I know you got to deal with you got a foot of snow melt and an inch to an inch and a half of rain to deal with, so that's not going to be fun. Hey, there's a lot of areas, by the way, in the eastern part of the U.S., particularly in the southeastern part of the U.S., going to be going over 100 inches of rain for the year. That's incredible. The rain has been. And it didn't really start that way. It really just kind of got in gear as we went through the middle and latter part of the summer and through the fall months. It has just gotten out of control. And of course, you got to throw in a hurricane in there with Hurricane Florence for the Carolinas, where some places got 30 inches of rain or more just from that one particular event. But nonetheless, this has been an astounding year. There's a lot of places up and down the eastern seaboard. Just about everybody's above normal, and some places way above normal. And there's going to be record annual rainfalls that are going to be set for some areas in the eastern part of the United States. All right, going to call it a night, folks. So thanks very much for being here. For those of you who are interested in perhaps a more prolonged weather experience, why don't we put it like that? I do have a weather platform, and it's on. I have it on Patreon. I'll put the link up here for those of you who are interested. You get a lot uh, of posts just for Patreon members, including live streams, which we did today. Earlier this evening, we did a live stream just for Patreon members. So you can you'll have that, and then you come to the YouTube live stream afterward. You can message me at any time and you'll get a timely response, questions, comments, whatever it is. It's a subscription platform, and it starts at $2 a month. So I put the link up there for you. Also, for those of you who are in the northern New Jersey, Long Island, New York City, Southern Connecticut, and Hudson Valley area, you have an Android device. You can download my app on Google Play. It's free with forecasts for that area, that geographic area I mentioned, northern New Jersey to southern New England, Hudson Valley, New York City, Long Island. The iPhone version of the app will be out, hope, very soon. We actually been spending a lot of time this week trying to finish it up and resubmit it to Apple. So hopefully we'll get that done by the end of the week, and maybe sometime next week we'll get the stamp of approval from Apple, and you can download it for your iPhone. And one other thing, if you are, an easy way to support my channel is if you shop on Amazon using my link here. We're a member of a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated sites. So if you shop on Amazon, you can go through this link, and Amazon throws a few cigars into my stocking for Christmas, and everybody's happy, and it doesn't cost you a dime. Thanks very much for those of you who have done that. Yes, Jason, I will actually let you know even before I let everybody else know about the iPhone version of my weather app. Have a great evening, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. If you're new, again, thank you and welcome. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is absolutely free. And this way you can get notified when live streams come on, which is pretty much every single day. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.